Every year, a few names slip through the cracks in the NFL draft, and then they go on to explode in fantasy football. You've seen it before. Guys who are taken in the 4th or 5th rounds of the draft then become league winners in fantasy football. Remember Tyron Tracy and Bucky Irving last year, 5th and 4th round picks. And today I've got 5 NFL draft sleepers who fit that description this year, and we're going to start with a dual threat running back that nobody is talking about. So much so that he doesn't even have a headshot right now on Player Profiler, but it's Jaydon Blue from Texas. He's 5'9", 196-pound running back, and this is a guy that a lot of people are forgetting about, but honestly, fantasy managers should keep him on their radar, or if you're just a fan of an NFL team that potentially takes him in like the 5th or 6th round because he's that good. Now, believe it or not, Blue is actually a highly touted recruit coming into college at Texas, but he had to sit behind guys like Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, Jonathan Brooks, all of these NFL's caliber running backs. But then in 2024 at Texas, he actually got the chance to take on more of a workload, and he flashed his skill set. As you can see right here, in 2024, he sees 134 carries, by far the most that he's seen in his career. Before that was just 65 and 15. He goes for 730 yards, but when you scroll over to what he did as a receiver, which is just a huge piece of his game, 42 receptions is great, almost 400 receiving yards. This guy put up over 1,100 total yards, or about 1,100 total yards, 14 touchdowns, and caught 42 balls on a 12% target share. All of those are fantastic numbers. And what makes it even more impressive is that he was actually splitting a backfield with a sophomore in Wisner from the Longhorns last year. Wisner actually saw more carries, 226, had over 1,000 rushing yards alone. This led the team, but Blue, compared to Wisner, was more efficient per touch, per carry, better receiver, and the bigger home run threat. And when you watch his film, he's quick, explosive, has great hands, and he's a smooth route runner. He's kind of a mix between James Cook of the Bills and, if you remember, Jerick McKinnon, these players who might not take on a 20 carry a game workload, but they're effective, especially when they get an open space. And honestly, he doesn't have to be that 20 carry per game guy. Those guys don't exist all that much. Sure, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, but a lot of guys now, just like Bucky Irving last year, see like 12 carries a game and find a lot of success. Then at his pro day, he put up even more impressive numbers, showing that he's extremely quick. A 4.38 40 time is what he ran at the pro day. Actually, he ran even quicker at the pro day. This is adjusted to just take into account that at pro days, normally maybe you have a little bit faster of a stopwatch. It's not as formal as what the NFL Combine is. Everybody getting that exact same stop and start time with that process, but the dude is fast. Now, in terms of a landing spot to watch for, this is obviously later on in the draft, so at that point he could go anywhere, but it would be a cool fit to see him with teams like Miami, Arizona, maybe even Philadelphia behind a guy like Saquon Barkley. I think those are spots where his creativity, there you go, can be put in a good system. So my verdict overall for Jaydon Blue is that maybe he can be this year's Tajay Spears, a guy that in his rookie year could play 50% of the snaps, be very explosive, have these home run hitting plays, not a bell cow, but a lightning bolt who can win you some weeks. Now let's go to the wide receiver position with Dante Thornton. This is a wide receiver out of Tennessee. Honestly, has a lot to like here. He's 6'5", 205 pounds. He's rising up my rookie wide receiver, my dynasty, my overall rankings, even in season-long leagues, best balls, because I'm liking what I see. I'm liking what we get when I look more into the film, at the production that he put up, and also recently his numbers in terms of athletic testing. Because that's what really surprised me. For being a 6'5" wide receiver, unique build at 205 pounds, he runs a 4.3 flat at the combine. That's 100th percentile overall. He has a good catch radius. His jumps and bursts might not have been the best when he tested these at the combine, but the speed is something that really does stand out at the position. Now, here's the thing. He's not like a volume guy. He's going to be your downfield speedster, a wide receiver 2 or 3 on a team who can create some big plays. He's probably not going to earn 10 to 12 targets a game. Like, as you can see right here, he's just a big play weapon. Right when he got into the league across 9 receptions in his first year, 19 yards per catch, and that's 21 and a half, 17. And in his final year, last year, 2024, 25.4 yards per reception. It led the entire country in college football. Every time this guy caught a ball, it was for, on average, over 25 yards. So that's insane. And it's not like he's catching bubble screens and just boosting his yards after the catch. These are deep shots, and he's hauling them in nicely. But there are some negatives to his profile. It's probably why odds are you haven't heard of him as much as some other guys in this class. His route tree is limited. He's mostly winning on go balls, posts, and seams, but when he does hit, it is explosive. So not to sound cliche, but in terms of like best ball, yeah, he's a pretty good best better and best ball player, but a late round pick maybe in fantasy. And for your real life teams out there, yeah, this is a guy that you just need 2 or 3 receptions out of to change the course of a game in a week, not 8 different targets. But it's not all clean for Thornton, because this is a player that he's a very raw player still. Like overall, if we had to look through kind of his track record, he started his first couple of years at Oregon, as you can see right here, as a young 18-year-old freshman, and he didn't do much there. He had just 9 receptions, then 17 receptions. In these seasons, he was having problems with his hands overall. He was inconsistent. His routes weren't there. He wasn't super nuanced, but then he kind of just grew into this role last year of being like, yeah, this is my one trick, winning downfield. That's just what I'm going to do. do, and it kind of worked out. In a lot of ways, he's kind of like the cousin or a brainchild of a Marquez Valdez-Scantling meets a DJ Shark. He has a little bit more physicality than an MVS, but he's maybe not as consistent of a producer as a DJ Shark could be. But in the right offense, he could pop off, and I wouldn't be shocked if you see a lot of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Rashid Shaheed type stat lines next year where he has 3 catches for 100 yards and 1 to 2 touchdowns. So my verdict overall is that Thornton is a nice wide receiver 3 for a team in a fantasy weekly dart throw. He might not see the field much early on, but when he does, he's capable of some really big weeks that could win you weeks. And like we said, in best ball, he's kind of like that perfect round 18 pick, especially if you're drafting right now an underdog where they somehow already have like these 6-figure contests. So next up, back to the running back position, and this is a guy that we've talked about in my top 10 running backs this year, but he's still somebody who's getting slept on. DJ Giddens, I often see him outside of a lot of other people's in industries top 10 running backs. I think that's a mistake. This guy is built like a workhorse, and he also plays like it too. I mean, if you look at just last year alone, this production, over 200 carries, 1,300 rushing yards, not even factoring in his receiving ability. Dude was averaging 6.6 yards per carry, got better every single year. And the crazy part, last year, he broke 69 tackles, one of the highest rates in the league. That is insane. Now, what makes Giddens polarizing, but also very intriguing, especially for fantasy football, is that he's just developed every single year. So depending on the year that you watched him, his first or second year, it's not going to look as good as what we just saw last year. He's gotten better every year, which is honestly good. Like, let's look at player profiler right here. In his first year, he had 89 carries for 518 yards. You scroll over to the receptions, there's not much going on there with just 8. His second year, he starts to break out in a major way. Career high 223 carries, goes for over 1,200 rushing yards. You factor in the receiving yards, this guy's going for almost 1,600 yards, adds 29 receptions. All of that is fantastic. It's solid. It's great. And then he finally has his massive year on less carries. He's going for over 1,300 yards like we just mentioned. When you factor in his receiving ability, this guy's averaging 7 yards per touch and 1,600 yards, back-to-back productive years in college. Now, he's not the flashiest player. He's not going to wow you with some highlight reel jukes, but he's reliable. He runs with patience. He breaks tackles, and he can catch the ball. Now, here's the part that you'll like if he lands on your favorite NFL team or if you want to draft him in fantasy. He is a very reliable and good pass protector, and that's what's going to get him on the field, especially as a rookie earlier than some other backs. But he does have some weaknesses to his game. That's why he's not like a consensus top 5 or top 10 running back in a very loaded draft class. And those weaknesses are that he does lack a second gear on tape in terms of speed. He's not going to take a lot of 60-yarders to the house, and some scouts do worry about his pad level and his upright running style. Now, overall, these are not the biggest concerns out there. And he kind of put some of those long speed concerns to rest at the combine. The guy went out there and ran a 4.43 40 time at like 210 plus pounds. That's 91st percentile. The jumps were electric. We already know that he's kind of, from that regard, a little bit of explosive, can break some tackles. So the long speed, it's kind of weird. It didn't show up on tape as much, but maybe it was just the blocking schemes, the opportunities. And at the combine, it was there. Now, right now, he has a projected draft capital of the 4th round. I think in most other drafts, he'd be a late 2nd, early 3rd round pick, but this draft class is loaded with honestly like a dozen to 15 running backs that 8 to 10 of those guys could be starters in the NFL. The way that he kind of reminds me of as a running back, he reminds me a lot of a bruiser who can also catch passes. So I kind of think about a Ramondre Stevenson, a more athletic and fast Ramondre Stevenson. Similar things could be said for like a Brian Robinson, except Giddens is a even better pass catcher as him. Now, if Giddens does land behind an aging starter, if he lands on a somewhat thin depth chart like a Detroit or a Dallas, I think he could be a guy who is one injury away from becoming a high-end RB2 in fantasy. Next up is a guy who probably could have been in the polarizing video that we did instead of the sleeper video, and this is Xavier Restrepo out of Miami. Now, let's talk about trust, because he kind of embodies that a lot. This is a guy for Miami who was the most trusted target on the field for years for them, and maybe of all time for a very historic Miami offense. Like, he led the ACC in both yards here with over 1,100, and he also led the ACC with touchdowns with 11 last year. He was a very productive player out of the slot for this team. If you just look at the production over the years, year before that, over 1,000 yards, had 85 receptions, a career high, earning a 20+% target share back-to-back years. I mean, this is a mega producer in college, but there's going to be an issue, and we'll touch on that in a second. But I just want to touch on the tape, because Xavier Restrepo's tape does not match up with some of the concerns we're now seeing more recently. He's compact, smart, and nasty in short areas. His route tempo is elite. He manipulates defenders with little hesitations and acceleration, and despite his size, he's not afraid to get physical. And now his size was actually better than people expected. I think he kind of put some weight on. He's 209 pounds. He probably plays a little bit closer to 200 pounds if I had to guess, but there is an elephant in the room, and it's this right here. Xavier Restrepo at the Miami Pro Day, he ran 2 40 times. The first one was a 5.1 40 time, and then a 4.9 40 time. If you know anything, it was a 4.86 to be exact. You know anything about the NFL, these are some of the worst numbers you will ever see at the wide receiver position. It just doesn't make sense. And honestly, what made more sense to me was the tweet that he later deleted, but he came out and basically says, if you go through this, that he ended up injuring his hamstring right before the 40. He normally is running in the 4.35 or the 4.53 to 4.58 range on the lasers, and he just wanted to go out there with some adrenaline and try and beat that. So if he is indeed running in the low 4.5s, I mean, that's not great, but it doesn't really matter because he's not a guy who's going to win with speed anyways. And I thought this was a really great point and tweet by Robert Griffin from when all this was happening. He says that his 40 time honestly doesn't matter, whether he was injured or not. He plays 90% of his snaps out of the slot as a merchant last year. If you watch the tape, you'll see that he knows where to get open in man or zone and how to separate and win on the ones. He's a QB's best friend. A lot of this makes sense. If he's a short area guy, kind of like a Cooper Kupp who ran in like the 4.6s, like, yeah, most of the time he's going to be dominating out of the slot and short to intermediate parts of the field. You don't have to burn cornerbacks. And although it is unfortunate, I do believe his story that he messed up his hamstring. I don't think you're going to find that much success and be the all-time, and let's show you this, be the all-time most productive receiver at Miami in terms of overall receiving yards in your career. Receptions with 200, the only receiver to ever do that at Miami. And this is a guy who's competing against legit NFL talents in Santana Moss, Hall of Famers, and Reggie Wayne. I mean, Michael Irvin's on this list as well, right? These are legit names. And it was Xavier Restrepo putting up the most production there. I don't think you're doing that running a 5.1, which is probably something around where I would run, right? Like, I think he's more athletic than that. I believe the hamstring issues were a real thing. Now, he is still projected to go in the 3rd round. I don't think this is as updated as the more recent news has come up. I wouldn't be shocked if he falls into the 4th round, but this is a somewhat weaker wide receiver class. Some of the teams that people think that he could fall to, Denver, the Commanders, the Cardinals. The Cardinals do make sense here as a slot wide receiver with Marvin Harrison on the outside. I like that a good amount, especially if they can land him in the 3rd or 4th round. And look, if he lands in the right spot, this could be a guy in his rookie year who goes out there and catches 70 balls, and I wouldn't be shocked. Now, my verdict overall for Xavier Restrepo is he might not have the highest ceiling, but in terms of his floor, it's rock solid. Now, before we get into the final guy, who I believe is one of the biggest sleepers in the NFL draft, if not the biggest, if you want to become a smarter fantasy football player in less than 4 minutes per week, you have to check out the Fantasy Football Club. It is my free newsletter that I send out multiple times per week, and right now, the off season is when most people fall asleep in terms of fantasy football. You don't have to. The link's in the description below. You can see right here, become a smarter fantasy player in less than 4 minutes per week. You can join over 40,000 other readers outsmarting their league mates. And right now, I know it's the off season, but this is the most important time to make sure that you're keeping up to date. So once August comes, you can just jump right back on the horse and be rolling while all your league mates are scrambling. QR code on the screen or link in the description below. Again, it's a totally free newsletter. All right, the next sleeper that I was talking about, maybe the biggest sleeper in this draft class, and I'm coming around to him lately a little bit more, is Savion Williams. This is a TCU wide receiver. I mean, let's just start with the size. 6'4", 222 pounds, like the prototypical NFL outside X wide receiver. And honestly, despite being 222 pounds, he moves like he's 20 pounds lighter. We can go over to his NFL combine testing. Ran a 4.48. A 4.48 at his size is something you would think like a 200 pound, 195 pound receiver would run. That's 96th percentile according to Player Profiler to ever attend the combine. To put that in English and not all the data speak, top 5% speed for his size at 222 pounds. This is an athlete. There's a lot to like about him. He has the build of Brandon Marshall, if you remember him. Most of you should, but some of the younger audience maybe not. But when he has the ball in his hands, he moves like a running back, and he could also line up in the slot or out wide. He's versatile. And in 2024, he wasn't just catching passes. He ran the ball 51 times for 322 yards and 6 touchdowns. No wide receiver in the country had more rushing yards. When I say versatile, I mean he was a cheat code down the stretch, and honestly, a cheap comparison would be Deebo Samuel. They're by no means at all the same player, but that's kind of how this TCU offense started to use him. But there are some negatives. He's honestly still a raw player. His hands are inconsistent, his field awareness is shaky, and some of his size, well, he doesn't dominate in contested catches the way that you would expect for a 222-pound wide receiver. There's also a lot of concerns that he never had a massive breakout year. You can see last year was by far his best year, 60 receptions, 20 more than any other season, but it took him until year 5 of his college career. 611 receiving yards was the most that he ever had on an 18% target share. But let's also keep in mind last year that he did have those nearly 400 rushing yards, 51 rushing attempts as well. So that does factor in here. He did indeed break out last year with about a 950 total yards. And when you factor in, let me just look at it here. When you factor in his receiving touchdowns, he had 12 total touchdowns. So he did break out, but it did take him until his 5th year. So maybe a little bit of concerns as well for some teams. So where do I see him fitting in for an NFL team, like his role, and how will that translate to fantasy? Well, he's a red zone weapon. He's a versatile player, and in the right offense, especially one that manufactures touches for big-bodied guys, he could be a touchdown machine. And when I think about some of these teams that can use a bigger body as a creative offense, they manufacture touches for their best players. I think of the Bills, the Packers, and the Panthers, teams that could use some more size and some red zone help. I think he can maybe carve out a role in these offenses. So overall, my verdict on Savion Williams out of TCU, he's not going to be a 100-catch guy, but I wouldn't be shocked if he catches 7 to 8 touchdowns in his rookie year. So these have been the players that I believe are sleepers in the NFL draft that can actually be valuable for your real-life teams, but your fantasy football teams, more importantly, for this channel. If you want to see the guys who I think are polarizing prospects right now, they're kind of tearing rooms apart. Some people think they're studs. Some people say bust, the best, the worst. Well, you can check out this video right here. I think it'll give you some insights to make your own decisions on these guys who could either be bust or league winners, depending on where you look.